Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Suzanne Pachetti Johnson. I am the program manager for Avenues to Wellness. We are a program of the Frank R. Howard Foundation, so a big thank you to the foundation for making this speaker series possible. I am extremely proud to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Tiffany Tucker. Tiffany will be telling her story of coming in to her true self as a woman. I acknowledge her courage to do this, and I'm very grateful. She has worked to improve our community for over 20 years. She was in the U.S. Navy. She has served as a board member on the Covelo Community Services District and the Round Valley Unified School District. In 2016, she ran for Mendocino County District Supervisor, and currently Tiffany is a trainer for Redwood Community Services, providing mental health education. Thank you so much.
First of all, thank you all so much for being here tonight. This is an honor and a privilege to be invited here, to have this opportunity to share my experience, but to speak on behalf of a community. And I do recognize that it is an honor and a privilege, and I take that very seriously. So I hope you enjoy my presentation. Welcome to Unapologetically Me, a story of transition. Tonight's topics, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to talk a little bit about trans history, talk about some Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus and queer definitions. We'll talk about coming in, what it means to come in. And I'll show you a little bit of my experience. Probably not very much because I got a lot of information to share with folks. Questions and answers will happen at the end, and they will be entertained as long as they are respectful. Who am I and why am I here? My name is Tiffany Tucker and my pronouns are she, her. I was asked to speak here tonight by Avenues to Wellness on my experience of transitioning from male to female. From an educational perspective, I sensed. So that is the direction we will be going tonight. I'm going to speak from my own viewpoint, from my own research, from my own experience. And I had written in here a line that I was only speaking on my behalf. I wasn't going to pretend to speak on behalf of any community. And then I realized that I was speaking on behalf of a whole community. I will be speaking from my own research and from my own experience. I'm not representing any agency or organization or group, but I am representing the queer community. From my life, from my experience. I was born in Oregon. This photo was taken in one of the many houses I lived in while I was living in Washington, somewhere around 74, 75. I like this picture. It's cute. I also understood at this point in my life that love was conditional. And in order to receive love, the love that I needed, I had to play a role. A role that didn't fit me. I would never be loved for simply just being me. I knew I was different. I knew at this age that my parents, my family, everyone around me was going to require me to play a role in order to receive their love. I had to practice being a boy. I had to follow the rules. I had to study. And I did my best to imitate everything. I got picked on. I was teased for being a girl. I was teased for acting like a girl. I was teased for being a sissy. And all the while I'm screaming inside, I know! Let me out! In 1978, I moved to California with my parents, first to Alder Point, and then out in the middle of nowhere between Alder Point and Bloxburg. If anybody's familiar with Southern Humboldt, I was in the middle of nowhere. And there was nothing else to be but a rough and tumble boy, because everything else was going to get your butt kicked. So, some definitions. Sex is the combination of physical characteristics, including but not limited to genitals, chromosomes, and sex hormone levels typical of females and males. There are 16 different chromosomal matches or differences, just in chromosomes. Intersex are people whose anatomy develops differently than most common for either females or males, and there are currently 140 recognized differences in sex development known as DSDs. Most transgender folks do not have intersex characteristics. Some do. Not all intersex folks are transgender. Gender identity is a person's internal sense of being female or male, or for some people, a blend of both. Transgender is someone whose identity does not align with the sex they were assigned at birth. Transgender can be an umbrella term for non-binary, genderqueer, non-conforming, agender, or any gender identity that does not align with the sex that was assigned at birth. However, these folks do not have to identify as transgender. Assigned male at birth. People raised as boys who do not align with male characteristics and or behaviors. Assigned female at birth. People raised as girls who do not align with female characteristics and or behaviors. Non-binary are those folks that don't identify as male or female. Gender expansive are those people who do not conform to their culture's expectations for girls and boys. Being transgender is one way of being gender expansive, but not all expansive people are transgender. Typically, gender expansive folks are kiddos, but we're not age gatekeeping here. Had a block there, mental block. Gender expression, the many ways that people show their gender to others, such as their clothing, their haircuts, the way they wear the clothes, the way they wear their accessories, the roles, and the activities they choose for their lives. This is a really cool representation of how we can view gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual orientation. It's not linear. We could put it in a Venn diagram and it would get really messy for some people. I like this because it's open. And there's other representations of the genderbread person that don't include words like other, femaleness, maleness, feminineness, masculineness. I just like that kind of representation. Cisgender is primarily a medical term. It is not a slur. It is not a derogatory comment. It's not even a term that's intended to have an everyday conversation. It's a medical term or a scientific term. However, cis does fill the gap in language that would exist if we differentiated people by normal and abnormal irregular and regular, or other. Gender and nonconformity has evolved organically across the world since the dawn of human history. Queer people have always existed. My own personal theory is queer people evolved so that humans could learn how to have empathy. There are examples of more than two genders going back to the Copper Age, 5000 BCE. Further than that, there are records. There is information further than back. And we are learning more and more all the time. Gender identity, gender dysphoria, being transgender is not a modern phenomenon. It's not a social media contagion. It's not a craze, a fad, or a phase. It's not a choice. It's not a lifestyle. It's a life. It's a human being that's just a life. We've always been here. We're in Egyptian mythology, Norse mythology, Greek mythology. We're teachers, we're leaders, we're guides, we're strong, we're powerful. We're in the Pacific Islands, we're in Hawaii, Samoa, American Samoa, and Samoa Diaspora. Africa, Uganda, Madagascar. All three regions of Madagascar have different representations of more than two genders. Asia, Indonesia, India, Thailand, Latin America, Andean culture, Incan culture, Zapotec culture. North American anthropological research indicates well over 100 instances of diverse gender expression in Native American tribes. Two-spirit. Term reserved exclusively for our indigenous folks. We honor those who came before us. Civil War era. 1861, Sarah Edmonds, otherwise known as Frank Thompson, was one of 400 documented women who dressed as men as part of the war effort. She returned to her female identity after the war and was married and had 3 children. Albert Cashier, the gentleman on the right, disguised as a man, enlisted in the Union Army in Illinois and fought for 3 years until the end of the war and continued living as a man. Charlie Parkhurst. Charlie Parkhurst was one of California's legendary stage drivers, and he lived as a man for more than 30 years. The railroad forced Charlie into retirement, and it was discovered while preparing Charlie's body for burial that Charlie was assigned female at birth. In 1907, Magnus Hirschfeld testified in a court that being gay or homosexuality was a part of the plan of nature and creation, just like normal love. I don't really agree with the language there at the end, but again, the quote, homosexuality was a plan of nature and creation, just like normal love. Magnus would go on to build the Institute of Sexual Research, where over a decade of research and transgender surgeries were conducted before students stormed the Institute for Sexual Research, confiscated over 12,000 books and 35,000 pictures and other works of literature and destroyed them in the city center of Berlin. For most of you, if you've seen a photo in your history book of a pile of books burning, it was his library. It was our library. In 2006, to commemorate the 40th anniversary, the city held a celebration and installed a plaque at the site where the Compton riots happened in 1966 in San Francisco. Here marks the site of Gene Compton's cafeteria where a riot took place one August night when transgender women and gay men stood up for their rights and fought against police brutality, poverty, oppression, and discrimination in the Tenderloin. We, the transgender, gay, lesbian, and bisexual community, are dedicating this plaque to all the heroes of our civil rights movement. But wait, there's more. June 27th through June 29th, 1969. Stonewall riots. Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, Dick Litchich, Seymour Pine, and Craig Rodwell were key people who went on to tell their account of the Stonewall riots. In 1970, they would go on to organize a protest against the continued violence against trans women and the queer community. We call it pride. Queer is an umbrella term. I use it. I'm reclaiming it. I hope I haven't offended anybody by using it. It's to describe anybody who is not cisgender and or heterosexual, or for anybody who rejects any conventional labels like gay or lesbian or bisexual or any part of the alphabet mafia or LGBTQ. It can also to reject the perceived norms of the LGBTQIA plus community, such as racism, ableism, and sizeism. The word queer has many different meanings over time. The original meaning, queer, meant strange or peculiar. Derogatory use in the late 19th century, the word began to be used as a derogatory term against queer people. For example, in 1894, British nobleman John Douglas used the term snob queers to refer to men who were attracted to other men. Queer began being reclaimed by queer activists in 1980s as a neutral or a positive self-description. For example, the activist group Queer Nation popularized the chant, "We're here, we're queer, get over it." There's not a single time I came out. I don't even know how many times I came out. I screamed, "Somebody please, let me out." Coming in includes the experiences and the implications of finding community and achieving a sense of belonging. The concept of sexual self-discovery or gender identity being a lifelong process, and sexual identity or sexual orientation and gender identity as being fluid, dynamic, and situational rather than static. Arriving at a place of acceptance of one's identity or sexuality, of its fluidity or how society views it. Coming in is coming into your own awareness. And we do this for years. Some of us are smart and we do it really quick when we're really young and we force our way. We're just persistent, insistent, and consistent. Some of us live in fear and hold back. Try to fit the roles that are assigned to us. Some of us rebel against that earlier than others. Some of us spend a lifetime. Maybe until they're 47. The second time I told my spouse I was 47. I told her the first time in 2006, but she didn't believe me. Much like the rest of the experiences I've had over my lifetime. Coming in takes as long as our families and loved ones makes it take. Mine took 47 years. And I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier. These are the best days of my life, and I've earned this place. I fought for it. I stayed alive for it, and I survived for this space. I'm going to take it. Every space. I'm going to take it. I belong there. People need to see me there so they know that they belong there too. I am speaking on behalf of a community. And I'm happy to do so. I know the responsibility associated with it. And I respect you all for being here, for entertaining me with your presence, your attention, your chuckles, your sniffles. I've heard you. Isn't she lovely? The larger picture is the first day I took estrogen. I'm on the trail at the point of down below the VA after this is before I went and had my appointment with my endocrinologist. Down here, I'm in New Orleans. This is when I'm first starting to socially invite people in, share my coming in story. There weren't very many people that were in on that. Up there at the top is about a year after I came out to my wife for the second time. And she said, as long as you keep it in the house, as long as you stay in the closet, it's okay with me. I couldn't. I couldn't. It didn't. Actually, it lasted a couple years. I tried. But even when I kept it in the house, I typically would dress or put makeup on when she wasn't home, and then I would attempt to have it off by the time she got back. And if I wasn't, then she was angry with me. If I was guilty. I was ashamed. I was mad at myself because I wasn't just myself. I had a coworker, as I was gradually testing the water and testing pronouns, who said, just be you. And Tiffany started to come out. And she was coming out like a ball of fire, and she's like, there's nobody stopping me now. The cage is open, and I'm going to do the best I can with it. I'm going to live the best life. I'm going to be the best role model. I'm going to do the best I can with it. I'm going to be visible. I've done that. Transitioning has been difficult. All of those fears I had as a child, that first image, all of those fears that weighed around conditional love, guess what? In 90% of my life, love was conditional. And I did not meet those conditions. Fortunately, there was 10% that stuck around, that supported me, showed me that they loved me and cared for me. Now I have a whole different family, a whole nother support group, a whole different 100%. I'll take that 100% over that unconditional BS any day. The hurt that people go through when they come into their own awareness can be devastating, especially if they have to do it alone. So much easier if there's love around them. It's hard enough, but it's a lot easier if there's love around them. There's enough challenges in the world. Nobody's going to choose to be trans. It's not a choice. It's not a lifestyle. I was born this way. And it just took 47 years to be able to show it to the rest of the world. Estrogen is fun. I was being sarcastic. I mean, I love it, and it's complicated. It's a complicated relationship. I very seldom ever took pictures before I started transitioning. I was behind the camera. I was the person taking the pictures. I very seldom took selfies in the decades before I started to medically transition. And now I'm a selfie fiend. I'm addicted. I'm a TikToker. I'm putting myself everywhere. I'm like, you cannot get rid of me now. It took a long time to get here. It doesn't have to. We just need to show the world that it doesn't have to. We can accept kiddos who are gender expansive. We can show them that they're accepted, that they're powerful, they have strength that should be admired, nourished, nurtured. All of our queer kiddos. I am on a wonderful journey. Being myself. And there's a lot of fear associated with it. There's a lot of hate directed at people like me. And I navigate Mendocino County and Humboldt counties fairly well. I have to appreciate where I live. I had a lot of fear about coming out here. When I was running for 3rd District Supervisor and I was wearing nail polish and I had bleach blonde hair that was all spiked up, running against 8 other candidates, there was a lot of fear. That was the same year I came out. I come out to my ex and I'm like, guess what? I'm running for 3rd District Supervisor. How's that for a year? I survived it all. I had a good time running. I don't know that I would ever do it again. I've already served on boards. I've had my elections experience. There's other ways for public service, and I will continue doing that. I will continue being present. I will continue being visible. And I hope that you will allow me to be a representative for you in our queer community. Good. Questions?
How long ago did you transition?
I started medically transitioning 2.5 years ago.
The operation itself?
I don't think we'll have that discussion here. Thank you, though. No, that's all right. I'm going to have a boundary on that question. Medical transitioning looks like many different things for many different people. Not everybody can afford everything it takes to medically transition. Some of it may just be in stages. So it's not safe to assume that a trans person is going to have any surgery.
I employed a transsexual.
Okay.
Yeah, and this was in the 70s, a very long time ago. But she went all the way. She had the surgery.
Many trans women will. Many trans men will. Some won't. Some won't have any desire to. And that's okay. Some won't be able to, some won't ever afford to, or some live in a state that won't allow them to, or will make them a felon if they do so. And I won't call those states out. But I won't travel to them either. We had a question here?
Yeah, I work in schools. One of the things that I'm trying to be most aware of and mindful of is, really walking the line for gender expansiveness with my students. And also just needing to know the best research information so that I can respond sometimes to parents who, I'm going to advocate for children, right? I'm going to do my best to do that piece. Mm-hmm. And I also sometimes feel like it's great to have resources. And I've looked online, but also if there's something you wanted to say, hey, this was really, really good, solid research information about gender expansiveness for children, that would be helpful for me.
The best resource would be WPATH. WPATH would be the best resource. And I know the acronym, but I didn't write it down. To World Pediatric Association of Transgender Health. Yes, ma'am.
What do you tell parents who are worried that their children are just going through a phase?
Ooh, great question.
What do I tell parents who are telling their children?
They're concerned that their children are just going through a phase.
All right. So, gender identity is fluid. It's not linear. It's not a fixed destination. And if a young child wants to explore with different toys and different clothes and different songs, and what harm? What harm? If they grow out of it, they grow out of it. But if they're insistent, persistent, and consistent, then help them. Give them guidance. Seek a therapist and a doctor. And even with that, it's still going to be stages. It's going to be developmentally appropriate. There's no rapid sending your kid to school, turning them queer, having an operation, and them coming back 4 days later. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. So just if they explore, even if they're 13 and they want to explore, 13-year-olds want to rebel and they want to fit in. they're being pulled every which way, right? Our teenage years are fantastic and horrible, right? And at 55, they're even more splendid, let me tell you. We don't jump right into medical transitioning. There's a social transition. Does it fit? Are they insistent, persistent, consistent? Nurture that. Where are they? There's this concept in cultural humility that we are our own experts. When you're working with clients, when you're a behavioral health specialist, when you're a doctor, when you have people in your care, you have knowledge, but the people in your care are the expert of who they are, what they need. Sometimes they might need guidance to find that. They might need someone to walk alongside them for a moment to find that. But they got it. And they'll get it once someone points it out to them and it sinks in. But when it comes to gender identity or gender expression or sexual orientation, if they're going to explore, explore. Who are we to judge? Exploration is going to give us our best answer of who we are. Everything is in a process. There's no rapid movement through anything. So I would just assure parents that everything is done in a process and done under care. And listen to your child. They are the expert. I knew. Yes?
Can you elaborate when you use the sentence, the kiddos?
The kiddos?
And how do you foresee the parents' role in kids at 12, 8, 9? They're the parents. So elaborate to me, what do you mean by kiddos?
Kiddos is just plural for kids.
Okay, what
And,
age?
Any age.
Okay.
Any age.
And how do you foresee the parents' role in their kids' lives, raising them?
To be nurturing.
Correct. Okay.
To support them, to nurture them, to love them, to guide them. So, we have an understanding of our gender identity somewhere between 3 and 7 years old.
Oh,
That's the research. That's just the research. Between 3 and 7, we have our identity. We know who we are. We know if we're a boy or a girl. By the time we're 7, if you know that you're a girl, if you know at 7 that you were a girl, why wouldn't I know at 7 that I'm trans? Just because I might not have the language for it, I knew that I was a girl. I felt like a girl at 5. And I was trying to tell people. And they were resistant to listen. And they weren't loving. And they weren't nurturing. And they weren't supportive.
I know a couple of my friends as parents. They are nurturing, they're opening their mind.
Okay.
So they're going with the process. But they are the one in control, in charge.
There's decisions that they're going to make.
The decision needs to be in the parents' hands.
There's decisions that they're going to make. Yeah, but the child, as developmentally appropriate, should be able to speak for themselves. Our children are not cookie-cutter carbon copy versions of us. Our children are unique human beings that have a voice, and we should listen to them.
As parents, we should listen to them and nourish them.
Yeah. Whether they're 3, 7, 9, 14, it doesn't mean that we let them go out and make horrible decisions and, self-harm to themselves. We offer them guidance, but still, we listen. And if they're insistent, persistent, and consistent, and you don't listen to them, great harm is going to be done. They'll think about hurting themselves. They'll have low self-esteem. They may even act on hurting themselves. 40% of all homeless youth are queer. Why?
They haven't been accepted.
Right.
Because love is conditional.
And love was conditional.
Maybe they're upset and depressed and using drugs and alcohol to deal with the lack of love and acceptance that they get
From their parents.
from parents, from society. And I'm speaking from experience when I say I knew 3 children who were younger than the ages of 12 who ended up killing themselves over this issue of not being able to be loved for the gender they knew they were. And when you see that kind of loss, it doesn't seem as important to me whether they're dressed in pink or blue or want to call themselves Shelley or not. To me, that life matters more.
Just gonna ask, could you please clarify for people that may not know what the age is that hormones start getting taken? Because I think that makes a big difference for parents or for some people who think that it's gonna happen when they're teenagers.
For most people, hormones do not start until after 18.
And by hormones, you're meaning supplemental hormones or hormones?
Like HRT. Now, puberty blockers are used after the onset of puberty for somebody who has been insistent, persistent, and consistent, and they have received medical care for a length of time, meaning they've been to therapy, they've seen a psychiatrist, they have a medical team working with them. Puberty blockers have been used for decades to stop puberty in 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds for precocious puberty, and they are safe. They've been used for decades. So, in extreme cases, when somebody has extreme dysphoria and their life may be at risk, a doctor may start them on hormones.
Can we also clarify that I think it's important to note that hormone therapy is something that is medically prescribed for not just youth or adults who are transgender. Hormone therapy is also something that is used for cisgender children and youth who have hormonal imbalances. And so it is a medication that is a medically prescribed, medically indicated intervention for a number of different things, not just, so when we talk about youth getting hormone therapy, there's both cisgender and transgender youth that could qualify.
Tiffany, thank you.
Thank you for being great.
Thank you all.